Hello there, my name is Jeffrey Grutner, and I want to talk to all of you today about energies that we are experiencing right now, how they are represented astrologically and in the mythological depth psychology perspective that is showing up in the sky. And specifically, I want to talk about the impending Mars-Uranus conjunction that is coming up on July 15th, 2024. And while that in and of itself is not a rare energetic, it is a highly energetic, and it can be used for, or I should be used, it could either manifest as something drastic or can be used in a positive manner. But what's unique about this one is that it is also aligned with one of the Behenian stars. The Behenian star is one of the 15 magical stars that the alchemist worked with. Now, that star is Algol, and it is one of the more kind of intriguing and mysterious and perhaps challenging energies. But before I go on, I want to make a comment that I have been an astrologer as well as a shaman and a healer, but I've been a practitioner of astrology for 32 years. And most of that time I've worked with the planetary energies because we know from study and observation how the planetary movements in the sky are linked to the archetypal energy movement within the collective psyche, within the human being, and in our endeavors. There's some way that science can't explain, but we know that it exists. The correlations exist. So in a skilled practitioner, you can explore these patterns very easily. What I haven't really explored very much until recently is how those planets, which are within our own solar system, and you can kind of extend the notion from, not rigorously but intuitively, from the idea of entanglement in quantum mechanics, that idea of synchronous happenings across distance. You can kind of take that from the notion of, well, this is our local region, the solar system, and the movements of the planets can affect, a larger energy of which we are part. And the sun and the moon are the easiest ways to connect with that whole notion. It's the sun is literally our life force, and the moon is affecting our rhythms and our embodiment. So the planets are relatively easy, but with my scientific training in mind, I had a little bigger stretch to go, yeah, but how do the stars, which are so distant and so on, how do they even affect us? How could they do that? So I had my own skepticism. But I find it fascinating, and in particular, when there are so many stars that are represented across multiple cultures. And the particular star I want to talk about on this evening, Algol, is one of those stars, which for thousands and thousands of years across vastly disconnected cultures, they saw that star as something significant. And their read on that star's energy was remarkably similar. So that says something. Now, what is interesting for you astrologers out there, and as I promise, as I tell the story, you don't need to be an astrologer, but what's happening on July 15th is that as Mars is coming along, moving reasonably quickly, it's going to align with Uranus, which moves much more slowly, and you have the impulse to take action, to protect, conjoining with the impulse to the will to freedom, the essence of equality, that breaking free of old patterns, energies. And together, these can be very impulsive and even explosive, or they can be incredibly problem solving, or the focus on an ideal in order to bring about more equality and freedom for all people, because those energies are related to that. But where it's happening is within a matter of less than a quarter of a degree, like 11 minutes of arc away from an exact alignment with the star Algol. Now, what is Algol? Algol is the eye of Medusa, held in the left hand of the hero Perseus. And in its, as a star, as a physical, its physical qualities is that it is actually a triplicate system, and the two larger bodies are in an eclipsing orbit. So it is a star that has been witnessed for thousands of years. It is a visually variable star. So every 69 hours or so, the dimmer star comes along and eclipses the brighter star, and we can see that with the naked eye. That over the course of just under 3 days, it goes from reasonably bright at magnitude 2.1 down to a magnitude of about 4 or 3.4. I don't remember exactly. But that is visible. And so it's like a slowly blinking eye. 3,200 years ago, the Egyptians actually mapped out lucky and unlucky days based on that star. And as it turns out, astrologers who have studied those stellar influences, which I said I'm more new to this, somewhat skeptical. It's an exploration for me, but it's intriguing. But they have seen that rather than it's sometimes called the demon star. I mean, it's the evil eye. It's the eye of Medusa. And I want to go into the exploration of that story in a moment. But that idea that it brings negativity isn't necessarily the case, because a lot of times people with that star also turn out to be incredible healers or seers, or just, it all depends. And this is based on the writings of another astrologer who studied this for many decades, that it can also foretell, if somebody is aligned with a higher principle, then it can be an illustrious and auspicious life. And I happen to know two people personally who were born on the day when their sun would have been aligned with that star, and they're pretty stellar human beings. And one of them is a famous, author, healer, psychic, so just based on those few data points, that star can either mean the downfall or it can mean something uplifted. So that's kind of some of the energy of its nature. But now to really go into an exploration of this, and as I said, it's going to be Mars aligning and with Uranus, and really tightly close to it on the 15th at 9:05 Central Daylight Time on the 15th. Those two are conjunct, and within hours Mars moves ever so much. Within 6 hours later, at roughly 3 in the afternoon, Mars is exactly aligned with the star, and at the end of 4 days, Uranus is exactly aligned with the star. And that is a particularly interesting period of time, because that happens to be when, here in the United States, the Republican Party is beginning their convention. So I noticed all of this, and I thought, this is interesting. And I wondered if, like many other people in politics over time, have chosen that very specifically. Because as I said, that Mars-Uranus energy can represent a warrior for freedom, or it could represent war and destruction, rebellion and willful imposition of one's ideas on others. These are highly volatile, potent energies. As I said, It can be used for good or ill. It all depends on one's alignment, on your principles. Now you add this star. Wow. Okay. So I want to take a perspective on, first of all, the story of Medusa and then, well, Medusa and Perseus, they go together. And I'd like you to, if you are someone who associates Medusa with the modern reinterpretation of it, representing or taken on as, feminists against patriarchy, women against men, and that rather narrow modern time cultural perspective, what I'd like to do is go back to one of the oldest surviving stories of the Greek myth, which is, and look at it from more of a depth psychology perspective. In other words, what are the archetypal energies being represented? So let's start with who was Medusa. Medusa was a beautiful young woman who dedicated herself to Athena and was in charge of taking care of and protecting a temple to Athena. So, and by doing that, she pledged chastity, just like, her goddess or the mistress that she was keeping the temple for. And but what is Athena? But Athena represents wisdom, an established order of wisdom. She also represents courage, the willingness to act, and the notion of being a quote-unquote virgin goddess has more to do with that idea of tradition, of holding tradition, and a slow, steady movement of wisdom being knowledge plus experience. And so that is Athena. And so the protector of her temple, she is protecting an established order of wisdom. That was Medusa's job. So Medusa, however, since she was so beautiful, she attracted a lot of the attention of gods and goddesses alike, but attracted them and always refuted them. But in this original telling by Hesiod, long before the other permutations, Poseidon came along. Poseidon, think Neptune. And Neptune in the modern astrological archetype is the potential of all that is. It is that realm of dreams and visions. It is an impulse to the exploration or of the unknown. Think of the ocean, and what is in the depths of the ocean are all the possibilities. Everything from treasures to sea monsters. And in that realm of imagination, all these possibilities exist. And along with it, as the way it is represented, is the idea of glamour and the pursuit of illusion, or I don't know if it's a pursuit, but it can represent illusion and delusion of being lost, and really kind of in a sense almost of going mad in altered states. It can potentially mean madness. But anyhow, in the story, and understand that the Greeks personified these energies so that they were more understandable. And I think we, especially in modern time, can get into a little bit of trouble if we personify them too much. And like I said, when we start attaching gender, we can get into some pretty tall weeds. It can be a useful device, but that's why I asked you to set aside, the notions, some of the modern notions, if you will, if you please, just to hear my telling of this. And so what we have is that this, where Medusa's job is to keep an order, keeping the temple in order for the temple of wisdom and courage. And to do that, she had to give up the idea of being fertile or of engaging in in things that would bring about new things. That wasn't her job. But when Neptune came along, or Poseidon in the original Greek, he fell in love, and she returned the feelings in that original telling, that she also felt enamored towards Neptune or Poseidon. And so they had an affair. And that is what was, from the standpoint of Athena, what angered her was that it was a violation of a vow. Her job was to protect the traditional standard order of wisdom, and instead she had, or not so much instead, but she was attracted to the realm of all possibilities, of bringing through imagination perhaps something new, and drawn to the allure of, who knows what it could be. Like I said, Neptune represents, glamour and falsity, but it also represents high spiritual attainment or vibration, the highest possibilities of spirituality, and it's a mix of both. So these are what she was drawn to, and she's represented as a female, therefore capable of bringing something new into the world. And the Neptune is engendered as male, although one could argue it's the most yin energy of all. So but whatever, that's the way the story is told, so that this can happen. And as a result of her dalliance with the realm of all possibilities, Athena is angered and she curses her. So think about it as the standard order of wisdom cursing someone who dared to explore the realms of other states of mind or of other possibilities, because it could bring something into the world that could either be dangerous or wondrous. So Athena had to curse her, and she's cursed, and so her great beauty was turned into a kind of ugliness, and her gaze would turn people into stone, and her hair was turned into writhing snakes. Now, the snake represents many things. It can represent the Kundalini in some representations. It can represent other aspects of feminine energy and wisdom, of healing, when it's used in the caduceus, etc. But it also has another side as well, because snakes can be venomous and dangerous. And when, in this case, in the story of the myth, if you cut off one of the snake's heads, 3 more would sprout up in its place. So one way to think about that is, if one enters a state of madness, let's say somebody who is, to put it into a more modern context, a conspiracy theorist. If you come along with a sword of reason, can cut off one of those, well, they're going to sprout 3 more conspiracy theories to explain why that reason is no good. So, at any rate, what happens to her is, it is suggestive of the notion that it is going outside the norms of accepted wisdom, and she's cursed by that, and becomes a danger, and becomes a threatening monster. So, again, so she's sent to a dark place to exist. Now enter Perseus. In the story of Perseus, the hero is he is cast adrift with his mother Danae, and they end up on the island of Seriphos, and King Polydectes, and who falls in love with Perseus's mother and wants to marry her. She doesn't want it, neither does Perseus. And Perseus, who doesn't have a gift to offer the king, offers, anyway, the story is told that the challenge coming from the king, because he thinks it'll kill Perseus, is to go get the head of Medusa, because nobody can withstand the gaze of Medusa. And instead, Perseus accepts the challenge, and off he goes. And so what is the hero represents in these stories is the courage to, with a clear principled direction, to venture out into the unknown to accomplish something, And so he takes off and realizes, well, he's kind of in some deep doo-doo because he doesn't know exactly how he's going to do this. So the first thing that happens is he encounters Hermes, who appears to him as this incredible youth with his winged sandals, and he's there to help Perseus on this quest. And he tells him all the things that he's going to need to do. He's going to need to go to the three gray women who are so old that they only share one eye between the three of them, and they have the wisdom and the knowledge of how to get there and what he's going to need to get there. And then Hermes also gives him a sword. Again, it's the sword of intellect and reason is one of the ways to interpret that. So then he and it is the three old women who are the ones who know how to get to Hyperborea, which is the land of the perpetual sun, and there the nymphs of Hyperborea can give him the other gifts that he's going to need and the final directions to how to get to the land, to get to the dark place where Medusa, who is now in her own madness, is dwelling. So off he goes. And you may remember some of these stories, but so he tricks the old women into telling him how to get to there. He has his sword, and along the way, along comes Athena as well. And she gives him her shield and tells him that you can use this polished shield in order to see the reflection so you don't have to gaze directly at Medusa. Never look directly at her, but use this mirror in order for you to see what has become of her. And there's some suggestions in the writings that part of what this represents is that if our own psyche can get locked and petrified, turned to stone, if we look at and dwell in the places where we have had missteps or we've had traumas. And I think most of us can relate to that notion. But if we have the mirror of wisdom or a wise counselor even, in order to look back at that incident, then we can handle it. So he has the sword from Hermes, he has the shield from Athena, and he now has the directions to the Hyperborean nymphs. And as he enters the woods, and there's the beautiful aroma of flowers and of ripe berries, and he hears the laughter of the spirits, and they're playfully splashing around in the water. And they hear him coming through the woods, and they immediately turn towards him. And but he tells them of his quests. And rather than being rebuffed, they're excited because they go, oh, a hero's journey. How wonderful. And so they know exactly what to do. They're going to give him, the a cloak of invisibility, the cloak of darkness, the ability, or sometimes called a cap, doesn't matter, but it's a cloak of invisibility. So there's magic involved here from nature spirits, and the nymphs represent this element of the natural world, or of Gaia, if you will, and they represent the potential, something coming into full flower, the call to life, really. Their beauty and charm were stunning to Perseus. And so these beings are giving him that, they also give him a knapsack that is magical to hold and protect him, for the knapsack to hold the head, to protect him and others from its gaze. And it's the kind of thing that will morph to exactly hold what's put in it. And so, and they also, the final gift, because he didn't get this from Hermes, but that is winged sandals, which give him the capacity to move swiftly, just like Hermes. Hermes can move swiftly between the upper, middle, and lower world. Between, the inner mind, the superconscious mind, and where we mostly dwell. So now he has the way, and they've given him the direction, and now he can go off on this quest. And so the rest of the story is that he's able to sever the head of Medusa, which ends this existence of being in a horrified or mad state and causing trouble. But and one could, all of these myths, they have places where you can explore more and you can see, well, what might this represent, and so on and so forth. But in this case, one might also even suggest that if someone is lost in a mad state of illusion and delusion, that's not a place to be left. And poor Medusa, all she did was explore possibilities. And, who is now sort of cursed by these other potentialities, because it's a lot to contain. But when he severs the head, out come the offspring of Neptune or Poseidon and her, and they happen to be Chrysaor, who is often depicted as a winged boar, but it literally means warrior with a golden sword. Again, the symbolism of a sword, golden truth, and he was able to slay many monsters in his story. And then the more famous is the winged horse, Pegasus, which is this ability to, symbolically, its ability to harness great primordial power, of a horse, and have it move swiftly again through different realms. And so those were some great potential outcomes. And now Perseus has this head, which still has the energy, the ability to turn people to stone, because his plan was to bring back the head and present it to Polydectes and turn him to stone so that he can't marry his mother, which he does do. But along the way, he also uses the eye of Medusa to free Andromeda from her chains, and so on and so forth. So this whole story of going beyond the boundaries of just maintaining the patterns of current wisdom into the realms of other possibilities that can lead to madness and monstrosities. I mean, just think of AI, for example, or think of the discoveries with the atomic bomb, and what there's potentialities there, but there's also the potential for madness. And we're in a state right now where people are so disconnected from what is true. They're not. Everybody has their own truth, and some of it is so devoid of fact, and they willfully ignore fact, which I would suggest that an awful lot of, in terms of our American election, Republicans are willfully ignoring facts and creating alternative facts. And so there's a kind of a delusional state. Yes, those are some of my politics. I think it's really dangerous, but whatever. What I'm pointing out here is that these things can also result in amazing things, and they're necessary, but they ultimately have to be We have to protect ourselves with the shield of wisdom and with the sword of intellect, and to use them wisely. And sometimes they are a warning of how they can be misused, or where it can go into some other, unexpected or undesired realm. And that these, so there's a lot that we can go with this story. But now you can kind of understand, perhaps, that the winking eye of, and I've gone out and observed it. It's pretty interesting, to see Algol, in this swirl of stars. You can see the pattern that is Perseus up there in the sky, and this sort of beehive of stars that represents the head, and Algol, the eye. And you can't see it actually wink because it happens over 3 days, but it's visibly dimmer for about 10 hours. So from one night to the next, it's pretty observable with the naked eye. Now, if in fact there is some influence, which thousands of years and multiple cultures say so, it exists. It at least, I don't know about fact, but at least it exists in our psyche. And somehow there is some synchronicity with that point in the sky, that star. I don't know, but it seems pretty intense and interesting and synchronistic to me that we have Mars conjunct Uranus conjunct Algol on July 15th. Now, how did the alchemist use this magical star? Because it seems like, it could be a dangerous thing, or, what would they use it for? To combat others? Well, it's used as a protection. One of the ways that you can do is to use, they would, for example, make amulets or create certain charms in that energy in order to deflect psychic attack, for example, to deflect the curses of others. And so whether you look at it from a depth psychology point of view, that you have the shield of wisdom, you have the sword of intellect and truth, and you have the beauty and potentiality of nature, and you have a direction of a principled action. You wrap all of those things around that, then these powerful forces, that of all potentiality brought into a form of one form or another, now it can be used in this magical, powerful way. So, it can also be used, as some of us know, the Nazis took a very powerful spiritual symbol, the swastika, a powerful sacred symbol, and turned it into something of evil. They reversed it, turned it into something of evil. So I see great potential here of working through ceremony, as I do, and as a shaman I work with archetypal forces. I work with the forces of nature that give me favor, because I don't I'm pretty clear about who's in charge. It's not me, except as my that's shorthand, but it's there is intentionality in working with shamanic and magical processes in order to work with fifth dimensional, higher dimensional energies to bring about positive change. But I think any one of us can do this with just simply our intention, attention, and focus about the potentiality here. And now I am going to make a comment that does relate to our politics, because Project 2025, if anybody has investigated it, which is what the Republican Party's platform, which no longer represent conservative values, but something far out in the weeds, in my view, from the American experiment and the idea of the equality of all and etc. That Project 2025 is all about limiting the freedoms and liberties of everybody else. And the presumptive nominee has already declared that he is going to unleash retribution against anybody he doesn't like. That all sounds like a plot of destruction rather than one of advancing, of creating chaos. And I don't know, humanity is pretty messed up right now. Maybe we have to go through chaos. I don't know. What I do know is that this is a pretty fascinating and interesting time that we're living in. And there's a great deal of potential in that energy aligning the way that it is. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And I hope that you get something out of it, because you can certainly use it for whatever you would like. Never mind our political situation, but I mean, that's a big concern to me when I'm seeing the things that are going on with our United States Supreme Court, and it's all pretty interesting and precarious. So how we align with these potentialities are very important. You can be, as a warrior at Mars energy, as a protector and driven to action and courage for Uranus, equality of everyone, and social justice and liberty. Or you can use a person or a group of people can use it to willfully impose, or to impose their will and their ideals on others. And so, yeah, and there's a range in between, of course. Interesting times. And if you've listened to me this long, I hope you found it interesting and thought-provoking. Thank you. Itakiwas.